Hi and welcome in this video. Bom dia to all my Portuguese friends watching this video, and I think we have a great topic today. Is Affinity the cheaper and better Photoshop?
My name is Benjamin Jaworskyj, photographer and adventurer. 10 years ago, I started to teach myself photography. Today, I travel the world as a professional photographer and filmmaker. Learn from my experiences, mistakes and tips, and join me on my photography adventures.
I give a shout out in each video to the different nations watching my videos, and if I should give a shout out to your country, write me hello and goodbye in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel and hit thumbs up. And now we start with the video. Maybe you heard already of Affinity Photo. I never did before, but a lot of you wrote me in the comments below and as well in messages, can you check out Affinity Photo? Because it's much cheaper than Photoshop and what the promotion says can do the same like Photoshop, and that for a great price. Because when you compare the subscription model of Photoshop, costs in Germany €12 per month. You get Lightroom with it as well and Bridge as well, but for people that only need Photoshop, that's a lot of money. It's €140 per year. So when you use it for 2 years, let's say only as a hobbyist photographer, you spend over €200 for only using the program, not owning the program. And that's what a lot of people, what I would think, don't like about the subscription model of Adobe. And a program that only costs €50 is maybe a great solution. But is it really? So let's check it on the computer.
As you can see, I already opened an image and I want to drag the image now onto Photoshop and as well onto Affinity Photo. First of all, I want to check the RAW converter, because the RAW converter, I would say, is one of the most important things in an image editing program, and most of the photographers photograph RAW, so it should definitely handle RAW files fast, good, and yeah, give a good image quality and editing options. So I just take the image and drag it onto Photoshop. As you can see, the image opens and you have now some adjustments already made because I opened the image before. If you're not used to Photoshop already, this is the RAW converter, and in the background is the main layout of Photoshop, and you can see camera raw. Then you know that the RAW converter is open as well from the surface itself. So I can just drag contrast, highlights down, shadows up a bit, and dynamic or vibrance a bit in the image, and I can as well put a gradient. In this case I did it already, so just do it again. Just click, drag it, and the exposure is down a bit. So now I have a gradient from the top to the middle of the image. Now I can open the image and it's in Photoshop. Let's do the same with Affinity. So I just take the image, drag it on Affinity. That's pretty cool that it works. But as you can see, it takes much longer to load one image. It's a big image, huge, 42 megapixel, but it should load faster, what I would say. It's a fast MacBook, good performance, it should load a bit faster. But anyway, there you see the surface of the RAW converter. You can see it, there's develop, there's RAW written, and you have here the options that you have almost the same in Photoshop as well, here on the top. And you have some other sliders here, like black point and brightness, which you don't have in Camera Raw. You have contrast, clarity, saturation, vibrance. So I want to do almost the same like I did. So vibrance a bit up, I go in the shadows. And what you can see here is that you can put the shadows much more up. Like this is 100%, and remember the 100% which we did in the Photoshop image, it's much less. So something around here. And the highlights down a bit, and then put contrast maybe up a bit. But you can see it's much darker. I don't know why in this case here. And now we can just do a graduated filter as well. So just go overlay, gradient tool, then you can pull a gradient as well, and then I can, for example, put the exposure in this case a bit down for the sky. But the performance is much slower, not only from a feeling point, but actually when we would put a clock or something next to it, it's much slower. And when we pull sliders, you see that it looks something like, yeah, big squares are moving around. So it's not that smooth like in Photoshop, but it's working, definitely. And you can make raw adjustments. So you can develop your image and can make some great things. And I think when you put some effort in and develop an own workflow with that program, because it's a different program, it's not the same program, it's a different one. And when you develop your own workflow, you can do a lot of things, I would say, with Camera Raw. So I just click on develop, and now it should open in Affinity. But also, as you can see, it's much slower in the loading process itself. But here's the image, and now when we take a look at the surface, you can see in the background there's Photoshop. It looks almost the same, only from the surface. So you have here all the different tools, and the tools, when you take a look at them, they look almost the same. They are a bit more fancy, I would say, in Affinity Photo, a bit more colorful, but yeah, you have to like it or you don't like it. I like it. I don't think that it's a bad thing that it's more colorful and more 3D like or something. So let's check the next thing. I want to work with layers now, because that's the most important thing in Photoshop, and why people actually use Photoshop and not Lightroom only, because they want to work with layers. If you are not used to layers already, you find the layers down here, layers, and you can now, for example, add a new layer, an empty layer, and just draw on it. Or you can as well take an adjustment layer, for example a curve, and just make some adjustments to the image, and then as well just draw on the adjustment layer, on that white thing, for example with a black brush, and then you can see that you now paint the adjustment layer away. And you can as well make it bigger and smaller by using a short key, and then just draw like you want to draw, or do more or less things. Can you do the same in Affinity as well? Let's check it. I'm not an Affinity Pro user. I maybe use it now for 1 hour, but I come from Photoshop and I'm a pro in Photoshop, and I use it for 10 years now. And I try to take a look from both perspectives, from a beginner perspective, from a pro perspective from Photoshop that is not used to the program, and if he can find the things in the program, and maybe you have some things to say to that, maybe you know where the things are that I'm missing, then just write it in the comments below, and never mind for that. So you have layers, definitely, it's written here, layers, and you have as well some adjustments. You find them here, and you have a lot of adjustments, and it looks something like Nik Filter, because you have as well here a default, or when I go, for example, here in the levels, you see there's darken and lighten already with an image visualized, so that's quite cool. And I just now go on curves, because I did the same in Photoshop. Click on it. And now I just drag it down, just like I did in Photoshop. Something like this. And now I close it, and now in the layers I see that I have a white layer here, but I have no idea how that thing works now. So I would now, because that thing looks the same like Photoshop, I would now click here, mask layer, and then go on that white mask and take a brush. There's the brush, click on it, and now as you can see, and that is pretty cool in Affinity, you can see the future, I would say, under this brush here. Because you can now see, before you draw, how it would look like before you draw. And that is quite cool. I want to do the same now like I did in Photoshop, so just draw the foreground a bit brighter with this brush, and as you can see, it works pretty cool. You have here the flow, the opacity, the hardness, but what I don't find now, and maybe you can help me when you're used to Affinity, where can I change black and white now in this case? Because now it's black, but how can I change it to white again? Because here in Photoshop you're black and white, but this is missing here. I have no idea where it is. Maybe you can help me with that. But so far, pretty cool, but the black-white thing is missing for me, or it's not good to find for me as a Photoshop user in this case now. But what I like, that you have actually the same short key. So when I just hit Control and Option and click, you can see that it gets bigger and smaller, just like in Photoshop. So that is cool. When you come from Photoshop, you have the same short keys, but work with a different program, but can do the same stuff. And it actually looks pretty cool as well. So something like this. It's just a rough thing to demonstrate it to you. Alright, so that's what Affinity Photo can do as well, work with layers. So let's check what else do they have. A great thing in Photoshop is that you have filters, like, for example, blur, distort, noise, render, sharpen, stylize, liquify, which a lot of people like, especially when they work with people, to liquify them, to make them smaller, bigger, whatever. I have a quick Photoshop video on this channel as well about that. Check that out. You have the camera raw filter to go back to that again, and you have some other options like, for example, HDR or stack images and all that stuff. Do you have the same in Affinity? Let's check it. Well, you have filters, so it's almost the same surface like in Photoshop. You have blur, sharpen, distort, noise, detect, colors. You have frequency separation, which you don't have in Photoshop, or not as a single point. You have lightning, which I tried to do, but I did not recognize how it actually works. But it's something like you can add light or something to the image. You have shadows, highlights, haze removal, which is like dehaze, and you can actually add Photoshop plugins in Affinity Photo, which is also pretty nice. And then there as well, you have here in this case, the raw converter. So you can go back to the raw converter by just hit that thing, and you have a tone mapping thing, surface. So you can click that, and I can just do it now. And it's not working because I'm on the layer, so I have to go on the background and just click it. Now the tone mapping is loading, and it's just like an internal HDR software. So it will now have, just like Nik software, some micro contrast and the edgy look and HDR kind of look thing in that program. Takes quite long to load. You have some presets now on the left, and it totally looks something like an HDR software, but it's in the program already. What you have as well is you can create a panorama, you can HDR merge, you can focus merge, so almost the same like in Photoshop. So when I now should give my own opinion on that is, I would say Affinity is pretty cool, especially for the price. You have a lot of features in that program compared to Photoshop, especially for photographers. Just keep it in mind, Photoshop is a program for like not only photographers. You can use it for illustration things, for graphic things, for 3D animation things. You can use it for video editing and all the stuff. So it's quite a mighty and packed program, but only from a photography perspective, Affinity Photo is not bad. I think you must get used to it, and you have to practice the program, and I as well, I'm not good in Affinity, I would say now, so I don't know where all the different hidden things are, but it's quite a cool program, and I think you have a lot of options in this little thing.
Alright, now I want to hear your opinion on the program. Is it actually the cheaper and better Photoshop? What are your experiences with the program? Write it in the comments below, from maybe different kind of perspectives, from the perspective of a hobbyist photographer that only uses Photoshop maybe once a week, from a professional point of view, from a business point of view. So write it just in the comments below. I'm really looking forward for your comments and opinions on that topic. And if you want to check out Affinity Photo, I have a link in the description and as well in the comments below, and as well with Photoshop and the whole subscription model of Adobe. And I use Photoshop now for over 10 years. Quick commercial, if you're interested in learn my best landscape photography techniques with Photoshop, not Affinity Photo, but maybe in the future, but with Photoshop, check out learnfromben.com. This is my website. There as well is a beginner course for Lightroom, so check out the website learnfromben.com. And now I say, obrigado e até sempre. Sounds like a song. Obrigado e até sempre. Or something like this, kind of Latin. To all my Portuguese friends watching this video right now, and we see us in the next video.